Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to the bunker. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from an anonymous caller. Let's listen to what they have to say.
Hi, Lloyd. I don't know if you'll hear this, but I need to vent. I've been awakened since for a year now, but I never believed it was the truth. I was born into it. My family is heavily indoctrinated, all of them. My cousin is disfellowshipped, but thanks to your videos, I was able to reach out to him and we have been talking. Not secretly, I've been really open about it to my parents. My parents know that I'm talking to my disfellowshipped cousin. They respect my decision, but they don't necessarily approve. We've had a bunch of discussions about why I don't think it's the truth. And, it goes nowhere. It's pointless to talk about religion or my point of view with them. I was baptized in 2015, practically forced because my family kept telling me that if I didn't baptize, well, I was going to die in Armageddon. At that time, I was going through bad eating disorders and I was a teenager, so I just went with it. Not because I believed in it, but because I was in a very emotional state. And I just wanted my family to leave me alone and just go with my life, and I really didn't care because at that time I partially believed it was the truth, so I was like, whatever. But 2019 was sort of like a blessing and a nightmare for me because I was able to wake up and find out the truth and find out that I'm not going to die for, I don't know, having a sex life or whatever. But it was also a nightmare because I am not someone who can fake things. And now I have to fake going to the meetings now that they are back in person. I have to fake giving parts, which I've always hated, and I get panic attacks every time I have to go to the meetings. My parents feel terrible. And to top it all off, my niece was just born, and of course I fell in love with her and I want to be a part of her life. And I know that the only way to be a part of her life is if I stay a witness. Because the minute I even think of leaving the religion, my sister will shun me. So I don't want that. I really want to be a part of my niece's life. And now I found out that my dad has been talking to our current elder about me being inactive. I really thought up until this point that my dad was faking my service reports because I was still able to do parts and stuff. But it turns out he wasn't. And now the elders want to come and talk to me, and I don't know what to do. What would you do? Like, how would you explain that I don't want to go out on service, but without losing everything? I mean, I do have an escape plan planned, but I still don't have the money yet, but I'm working really hard for having like a year off religion and maybe then come back. But I don't know. How would you explain to the elders when they come to do one of those shepherding calls that I don't feel like going out on service without getting in trouble? And what else? I think that's my main question. I'm just so mentally tired, burned out about this whole situation. Sometimes I just think it's best to just fake it, but how do you fake service? Like, how do I walk up to my neighbor and be like, hey, neighbor, if you don't join this religion, you're gonna die in Armageddon. Child sex abuse is being covered up. What else? Oh, if you make a mistake, your family and community will stop speaking to you. What else? How can I do that? I can't be that much of a hypocrite, but I also don't want to get in trouble because getting in trouble means losing my niece. Like at this point, I don't even care about my family. I just want my niece in my life. And yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for your message. I'm going to have to begin with the usual disclaimer that I am not a mental health professional, and what you've described there, particularly when you mentioned about the eating disorders, albeit that was, I think, 2015, but it sounds like you are struggling with your mental health due to this situation that's being imposed on you. And ultimately, it's mental health professionals who may be of most or will be of most use to you, based on some of the things you've expressed there. But it's a very, very difficult situation. I think that when you're of a certain age, and it sounds like you might still be quite young, I'm guessing you're maybe early 20s or mid 20s, when you're still dependent financially on your Jehovah's Witness family, you've got to be incredibly strategic. It would be lovely to, go out all guns blazing and say, this is a load of nonsense, I'm out of here, peace out. That would not be a helpful way in your current predicament to deal with things. So if I were in your shoes, and because you mentioned that you don't have any money, you mentioned that the elders want to talk with you, again, it sounds like you may be dependent on perhaps your Jehovah's Witness parents, purely on an existential basis. You need food on the table, you need somewhere to sleep, that sort of thing. I think if I were in your shoes, I would plan my exit strategy very carefully. You do mention that you have an escape planned, but I don't know how fleshed out your plans are. I would set a date or set an age by which I want to be free from it all. I really, really would. I would try to figure out how much money I need to be earning. I would figure out what sort of job I need to be getting to earn that sort of money. If I don't have the qualifications for that sort of job, I would be looking into how I can get those qualifications. These are all things, sorting out the housing situation. What would be the best solution for you? Do you need to start looking at finding shared accommodation with perhaps some roommates, or can you afford to rent somewhere by yourself once you are set up with work? These are all situations where you need to sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and plan it all out. And once you have your plan, it's going to be so much easier to deal with things. And in the meantime, while you are executing your plan, there is nothing wrong, in my opinion, with telling the elders exactly what they want to hear. Because they have so much power to make your life miserable. It's power they don't deserve, power they are not entitled to. And frankly, they're not entitled to delve into your personal religious beliefs. It's not something that they have or should have any power over. So if the elders want to talk with you, and who knows, maybe by now they already have spoken to you, but let's say someone in your situation is watching this voicemail video, again, I would just tell elders exactly what they want to hear. If I were in a situation where I needed to execute an exit strategy and I needed to bide my time and be strategic. As to what you were saying about your niece, that's a tough one. And I do relate because I have two nieces that I barely know or don't know. I don't want to talk too much about that. But I personally believe that the religion or my religious background and the extent to which I speak out against the religion has played a large part in me not having them in my life or them not knowing who I am, which is really, really sad. But the situation is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I would much rather, speaking for myself, be able to live my life authentically and say what I think and be surrounded by people who love me for who I am, rather than living a life of pretense, rather than spending the rest of my time on this planet parroting beliefs that I know not to be true. I'd rather live an authentic life. I don't think you can overestimate just how important it is to live authentically and not live a lie. Now, it could be that you're at a point in your life where you feel very vulnerable and you feel like you need to salvage as many relationships as possible. All I would say is that time is a healer. And also, the way you feel about your relationships now, again, let's say in your 20s, is not necessarily how you'll feel about them in your 30s or 40s. We're constantly changing, we're constantly adapting, we're constantly growing as humans. Just whatever you do, my advice would be, don't put yourself in a position now where you'll look back in the future and think, I should have gotten out sooner. I should have made a break earlier on and started establishing a network, started establishing a social infrastructure, so that I would be in a better position now that I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s. But ultimately, only you can figure out what you want. And if your niece is so important to you, maybe you feel you need to keep this situation going longer than simply moving out and finding your own place. A little tip when it comes to preaching, because one of your questions is, how do I fake being a Jehovah's Witness? For the time being, at least, one thing you can do, one thing I actually had to do at least once when I was out preaching as a PIMO, I used to say, can I interest you in a free home Bible study? Which is actually a presentation that was recommended by numerous circuit overseers, I think. They used to call it the direct approach. And of course, it never worked. Or probably once in a blue moon it would work. So I would just deliberately sabotage my presentations so that they would be terrible, or they would be as unappealing as possible. So what I'm saying is there are ways of you getting through and navigating a situation where you need to put up a pretense. But I would strongly argue, for the sake of your mental health, that you live a life of pretense as briefly as possible. And you do so with an end goal in mind, so that at some point you can wash your hands of all of this. Because I don't think it's in your interests, in the interests of your mental health, to spend years or decades paying lip service to something you know isn't true. I think that the costs of that could be devastating in the long term. So I hope some or all of what I've said there is helpful for you, and thanks again for calling in with the voicemail. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to broadcast your message on my channel. But that's all I have time for. Thank you so much for watching.